Hello everyone. This video is to let people know or have a better understanding on what are the Android jobs available in the market right now. Please note, since I am from an automotive background, all my references would be mostly with respect to this domain. Over the past 1.5 years, I have attended interviews myself and I have also taken interviews related to Android development. What I have observed till now is either you don't get the right interview panel or the candidate is not clearly aware of what is the role he is applying job for. So I thought I will make a short video on that so that people will get better idea and can prepare well and possibly get the job. Now, in the market, we have two kinds of jobs related to Android. One is your regular Android developer and the other is an AOSP developer. Android developer is a software engineer who specializes in creating applications for the Android operating system. Now, most of the population are using Android mobile phones. Now, there are some applications which come as built-in when you purchase the mobile and some applications you install from the Play Store based on your requirement. So a person who develops these applications, let's say your shopping applications, streaming applications, gaming applications, anything that can be one of your specialization, is called an Android developer, or in other terms a mobile application developer. What are the key responsibilities and skills for this role? Since you are creating applications which are used for interaction with user, you have designing and developing responsibilities, designing easy to use, user friendly application and how it should work, developing. Then you have programming, you have Java, Kotlin programs, programming languages which we use for this. Recently, from the past couple of years, we are moving towards using Kotlin more and more than Java. So having Kotlin experience would definitely be a plus for you. Then, when you are developing something, it is your responsibility to test it. When you are developing a mobile application, it's your responsibility to test it in all possible mobile devices to check the compatibility, screen size with screen size, resolution and such. Then we should also have experience finding the issues, fixing the issues during the development and after deployment. Android is one of the most changing and updating operating systems out there. So you should also be staying updated with the latest version. Like currently in the market, it's Android 14 KitKat. So you should know what is it providing, what are the features it is adding to the previous version. Then, what are the tools and technologies that you require experience on for this? First is Android Studio. If you are new to Android, this is an open source development environment, integrated development environment provided by Google for you to create Android applications and test the functionality in a virtual environment. You should also know either Java or Kotlin. Like I said before, Kotlin is preferred. Then you should also have experience working with Android SDK tools. This is where you create your environments and you build it for various configurations, test them and such. Then you should also know about Gradle, how it works. It is your automated build system which generally manages dependencies. Then if you're looking for an Android UX developer or even a UI developer, you should have a good idea of the design principles that are being used, design patterns that are used and such. Then you should also have experience using any one of the source code versioning tools. Generally it is Git or GitHub. Now let's see what are the career paths that you will have. One is a junior Android developer. For this role, it is enough. Minimum requirement would be you have developed some Android applications and published them in the Play Store during your college project, okay, as your college project, or you have worked like 6 months to 1 year in this role where you have learned all the basics. Your main, let's say, main responsibilities would be learning things and assisting the people. Then you have the senior Android developer. This is someone who is experienced, who can create applications with very fluency. They have a very good understanding of the framework and the libraries being used. Then we have the Android team lead. This is someone who, like if you have, let's say, 6 years, which has come to 5 years recently, if you have like minimum 6 years of experience in Android application development, then you can try for this role where you get to lead a team, 4 to 5 minimum, and you help them resolve their issues and then plan deliveries and such. Then we have the Android architect. This is someone who has a very good idea of how the application layer in Android works, and they set their own templates, frameworks, how the project should go, all those guidelines. Then the next one is generic, your mobile application developer. This doesn't actually have to be, a job with any company. You can also freelance, you can even consult. Generally small, let's say small businesses always look for someone who can create mobile applications for their business. So in those cases you can freelance. Then what is the benefit of being an Android developer? First is Android is a very huge market and you can have potential growth if you come to this particular area. Then since it is an open source, you have the freedom to create whatever you want. Then again you have a high demand because of the growing market, and also Android is a very, it keeps, it's one particular language that has continuous evolution with various versions, so there is always scope for learning. Having said this, Android developer generally for me is something we mention when we want someone to create us mobile applications. Like say you can get a job in Samsung, they have their own applications, mobile companies basically. Then before I speak about what is a or who is a AOSP developer, let me give you a brief of the evolution of automotive infotainment. Way in early days, initially when you had cars and jeeps, the only entertainment you had in the car was your radio, where you can tune to FM or AM, which is still there in the current market. Then they had it replaced with or added with cassette players. Then in 1980s, CD players came into picture. In 1990s, navigation systems which provide maps to the driver, take the GPS, guide him to where he is going. These are taken for granted now, but it was introduced in 1990s. This touchscreen era and smartphone integration is something which is very important, at least for this video. This happened in early 2000s, where instead of just having your basic buttons based interaction with the entertainment, we introduced touchscreens and we introduced apps, and just increase the visibility of entertainment. What happened is, initially we were having automotive systems based on Linux OS. Please note, infotainment systems based on Linux OS, then QNX OS. From user perspective, as we got mobile phones, all users wanted to use similar applications on car as well. Like I have a Spotify, I want Spotify in car as well. So from the phase, at least the automotive industry, from the phase where they provide these apps which replicate the functionality of mobile, they have evolved to using the Android operating system itself, so that user doesn't feel any difference while using the mobile or the car. And that's why currently in the market there is a huge demand for persons who can work on Android operating systems. But there are very few people with the skills out there. Then around 2010s, we had connected cars. This is where you had over there updates, like how currently you are updating your mobiles, software updates. We can also update the software in the vehicle over Wi-Fi or cellular networks. Now it's the age of AI and voice assistants. You want everything to be AI controlled. You want user to be lazy, or let's just say you want them to concentrate on driving and control the infotainment using voice commands. Having said all this, I wanted to stress a point that now all the major automotive companies are developing Android operating system based infotainment. Now, when we say operating systems, if you are from CSE background, you would understand the various layers that are defined for a particular operating systems. It is purely their decision, like Linux has its own different layers, Android also has its own different layers. And based on the layers, we have different jobs, which I'll tell in a minute. Now let's see what is AOSP, Android or open source project. So this is the open source version of the Android operating system that Google releases under the Apache license. What does this mean at a high level is you're granted to use it, modify it, and also add new features as you want. You don't have to get any permission, you don't have to pay any royalties since it is open source. The only thing is whatever software or whatever applications you create upon this AOSP also will have Apache license only. Anyone can use it, basically, it's what it means. Now, an AOSP developer is a software engineer who contributes to the development and maintenance of this open source codebase. Let's go to the Android layered architecture. I will not go into the details of what each layer means. Let's just know we have an application layer here, we have a framework layer, we have a native layer, and we have Android runtime, which we don't disturb most of the time, so I'll ignore that. Then we have the HAL layer and we have the kernel layer. This I have taken from the Android platform developers website. You can also go there and read through the different layers if you are interested in it. All I want this video to concentrate on is about the jobs. So let's see. Currently in Android, we don't use a single language. We use multiple languages. At the application layer, we have already discussed it's Java, Kotlin. At framework layer, it's Java. At native layer, it's C, C++. HAL layer, C++ or Rust. Rust is a new language again, which is supposed to be very good in memory leak prevention compared to C++. Then you have embedded C in Linux kernel. So basically, we have so many languages that it is highly impossible for a person to be expert of all these layers. So when we post a job, when companies post job, they will be looking for people who have expertise working in a particular layer, and based on that the jobs will differ. If you see, if we want someone who has to work on application layer, Android application developer is the role we are looking for. I will tell you how is this different from Android developer, which I told you before. I'll tell you that. So this is Android application developer. Then we have Android framework developer who has experience working in this particular layer. Then we have Android middleware engineer who has experience creating libraries in native layer. And we have Android HAL engineer who works on HAL layer. And we have Android BSP development engineer or kernel developer who works with the hardware. Now, if I say, let's say you are Android middleware engineer, then in the interviews, what we will be looking for is you know how to work with this, and you also know how to communicate with the top and bottom layer of this particular layer. It means if you say you are an Android middleware engineer, you know how to create C++ libraries, put them here, and you also know how to interact with the framework layer and with the HAL layer. Okay, so we see both. Then apart from layer specific, let's maybe go back to that. And even in each particular layer, we specifically look for a specialization. Like if we are looking for an Android HAL engineer, we look for an Android audio HAL engineer who has experience working with audio related concepts in Android. We look for an Android camera HAL engineer who has experience working with the camera pipelines. Okay, so specific feature specialization is required. Apart from layers, there are also jobs which are for the complete stack. One is Android platform specialist. This is someone who has a basic knowledge on all the layers, how the communications work, and how to build them, how to customize them, how to remove some things or add some things and make it into a new product, all these things. So it's the Android platform specialist. In this case, what happens is, generally, since the interview situation is very bad out there, generally you would have a test where you have questions from Kotlin, questions from Java, questions from C++, general Android questions, and also questions related to Git, etc., etc., etc. Then we have Android integration engineer. This is someone who knows how to flash Android operating system which we built on a particular hardware and ensure everything is working fine. As soon as you build it, it doesn't work fine. You might have glitches in the touchscreen and audio might be very noisy. You have to tune that. So all those things will be there. So this someone is uh, responsible for bringing up the board with Android OS. Then we have Android architect. This is similar to what I mentioned before. This is someone who says you have to do it this way only. Because at each layer you would have your own frameworks defined. There are many frameworks out there which say this is the best way to do it. So architect is someone who decides this is the one that has to be used by you, by obviously checking the pros and cons. Yes. And he would also be responsible for one or two projects most of the time. Now, I told you, I'll tell you how the Android application developer here is different from Android application developer in mobile. What are the mandatory skills? It's assumed or it's taken for granted that you have worked with Android Studio and you have known everything. So that is not mentioned here. What else is extra? You should have personally downloaded the AOSP source code, built it, worked on it, tested it on the hardware. And this is not easy. And this is something in the interviews where I took interviews. There, I have seen people who have experience as an Android developer with Android Studio, but zero experience or no knowledge on what AOSP means. But AOSP developer, it's mandated that you have a hands-on with the AOSP source code. You know how it works. You know how Bezel builds work. Then you should also have a expertise on one particular feature. Like I said, you should either have audio or Bluetooth or camera or any other feature expertise in the Android OS. Then you should have experience working with board. Android integration engineer brings up the board, but the person who develops has to at least have the experience testing it on the board. Then you should obviously have exposure to any one of the source control versioning systems and also any one of the building systems, like you have artifacts, so those kind of things. And the Android source code is very huge. It goes to around 400 GB give and take. So you should also have experience working with either AWS or GCS cloud services. And this Jira is something that is asked nowadays. You should have experience working in agile way. Then the most important thing is you should have worked on any of the two Android versions. Say, majorly in automotive when they started. The work from the past 4 years has been 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 they are adopting right now. It's great you have working experience in 14, but it's okay if you have working experience in 13. 13 at least you should have. One version should be latest or the latest before one, either AOSP 14 or AOSP 13. So this is it. I hope this is useful for you guys. If you want to know more about Android, please subscribe my channel to get notifications for future videos. Thank you.